just going to stand over here and help TJ if I can.
Okay, we all set?
I don't think he needs much more help.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order.
That's right.
Okay, Chair, I guess we'll be starting with GT 1229.
Yeah, I'll go through the roll call first.
Okay.
Mr. Bell?
Here.
Mr. Culpepper?
Here.
Mr. Haitius, excuse. Mr. Griffiths? Here. Mr. Huntington?
Present.
Ms. Peoples?
Here.
Mr. Leitner? Here. We have a quorum.
First item tonight is we have Wilcox representing Corral of Tri-County to present the traffic impact study. As you recall, we had a draft presentation last week and gave them direction to come back with some additional information. I personally contacted by phone all of the neighbors that had attended our meeting last month and indicated that we would have the traffic impact study presented for their information as well as the commission, and there would be ability to ask some questions. So as soon as they're ready to get set up, we'll go through the presentation and go from there.
Yep. Thank you. Nice job, Wheels. Just because they're a little bit too late if you have. And I might try to say it all. We'll go over this real quick. I mean, not the excruciating detail that we went through last week. A couple of you were not here last week, so we want to make sure we get that. Plus, some of the residents were not here last week either. We talked a lot about the detail of this thing last week, which is not probably something we want to do. But the idea here was to identify the traffic impacts that would be associated with building a Golden Corral restaurant on this site versus, say, having it been office in the past. And there's a standard accepted practice methodology that's used all over the country to figure this stuff out. So we followed that practice. We also obtained a scope of work, in other words, which intersections need to be studied, all that kind of information, plus some background traffic information from the city and information that came from Golden Corral. And the scope kind of came from a lot of concerns from Planning Commission and from residents' concerns, so that's how we ended up with the intersections that we studied and the approach that we took to coming up with the answers to the study. There's a couple of things that that come out of this that I think are important, that there was really no significant traffic impact. There were a couple of things that we found that are existing problems that should be kind of looked at or fixed with or without the Golden Corral there. And that involved maybe kind of creating a better lane on the westbound approach to the intersection at Edwards, so that you can have right turns without having to drive over kind of a poor condition shoulder kind of thing. Is it, can you make it bigger? Or? No, I mean, well, maybe that's. There's also a no left turn sign that is in the opposite. Is that our?
Yeah, that's your point.
There's a no left there's a driveway kind of like right here on the opposite side of Southfield that has a very faded no left turn sign that ought to get replaced because the proximity of the two drives is not a good one, and you really, this turn has been prohibited for a long time. It's just that the sign's not in very good condition, and we recommended that be replaced. We also recommended that if when you do build this access, that you build the access consistent with the Road Commission's design standards, which they have specifics about how wide it's supposed to be, the radius is, what it's supposed to be made out of, the grades on it, and all that. There's a section in here that talks about the vehicle trips, and we're going to talk about trips. In other words, how many new trips are going to come from this in comparison to either what's there today, or what was there, or how they're going to be distributed throughout the day based on this use versus, say, an office use. And we went through that a little bit. We're going to talk about that again tonight because we had some questions about that last time. That, for example, we didn't have a comparison of existing, in other words, if it's built as office versus what are you going to have if it's Golden Corral. We didn't have that in the study. We have that tonight. So.
This was also a concern that James was actually in at the time.
Well, we have that too, and that's in another section of this. I mean, we have a specific PowerPoint that we put together addressing all of the questions that we had from last week that were not part of the presentation, but I'm just trying to kind of gloss over the study to the extent we can to kind of familiarize the people that weren't here last week. But we do have answers to all that. There's a methodology that allows you to determine how well an intersection processes the traffic by giving it a grade A through F. It's called level of service. You can calculate that. Again, that's a standard calculation that you can go through. And right now, you'll notice when you look at the report, there's a midday and PM peak hour. And the fact of the matter is that overall, the intersection of Southfield and Edwards operates at level of service A. Pretty low overall level of service. But you have two approaches that are not operating too well, and the reason they are is because the traffic signal has to get in step with the signal that's at 12-mile road. There's not a lot of demand on these two approaches, east and westbound, but when you get there, there's a real good chance that you have to wait so that the signal gets in step with the one at 12-mile road, so that adds to the delay. I don't know if there's...
Just through the chair, Mike, you just want to identify what that means is 50 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Talk about what those numbers really mean.
These are delay per vehicle, 50 seconds of delay per vehicle. So 58.3, fortunately. So a little bit, when you get to about a minute of this level of service E, which is kind of capacity, but it's not really at capacity. The delays there are being imposed on it because of its need for the signal to stay in step with the one at 12-mile road so that you can maintain progressive movement of the vehicles on 12-mile, or I'm sorry, on Southfield. The platoon movements, if you drive the speed limit, you usually can make the lights if you stay. Now, it doesn't always work, but when real peak times get there, they get over capacity and it doesn't work. But the reason, those two signals need to operate together, otherwise you're going to end up with vehicles caught, and traffic caught in between Edwards and 12-mile, which is not what you want. You want that to kind of clear out so that the driveways people can get out of the driveways. But in order to do that, they have to stay in step, and that increases the delay on the cross streets.
And if you could also explain through the chair, A is a level of service that is ideal, but D is lesser, but it's still a passing grade. So if you could just explain.
Right. Okay.
What is passing?
In an urban area like Southfield, in fact most places, a level service D is considered acceptable, A is the best. A lot of times intersections are not designed for level service A. They'll go to look to have them at level service C or D, is what you design them for, which I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to you, but that's what happened. Turns out to be the best use of public funds and a lot of other things. But the bottom line is A is ideal. In other words, it's a very low delay, and it's almost usually an indication that you really don't have any problem.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to?
You can ask it through the chair, but if you could we wait until after?
Finish it before. You'll get the opportunity.
If you don't mind writing it down.
If you want to kind of click through TJ to maybe figure 4, we had for figure 3, these are existing traffic counts. So can you get this on at the same time and show that? Okay. These numbers, this is the midday number and that's the PM peak hour number. These are existing traffic volumes for a whole entire hour that make that particular movement at that intersection. This is figure 3 in the study or in the report. So you notice you don't have a lot of traffic. These are very low numbers, and to be honest, if you had these kinds of numbers consistently, it's questionable whether the signal's warranted. But that's another story. Whereas the volumes on Southfield Road are real high, that's why when you come up here, this thing's actuated, it waits until it gets in step with the one down at 12 mile. But those are the existing counts. So the numbers are pretty low on Edwards and the driveway across the street. The next group of numbers is our 24-hour traffic volumes. Some of these, or actually most of these, we got from the city gave these to us. So you have the top number is 2011, which these were taken in August of 2011. And the bottom number is June of 2002. The question last week was, these are stark differences with school in session. Well, it turns out, and we have a comparison of this in the PowerPoint later, but it turns out the school was in session in 2002 when those counts were taken. Okay? But we'll talk about that later. These differences are not explained by school being in session. They're a small component of the difference. Just for food for thought when we get further along here. So these are pretty low 24-hour volumes too. Exception, these numbers up here are fairly high, but a good rule of thumb number for a two-way volume on a residential street, max number is like 2,000 a day. You're still under the 2,000, but you're getting close. But now the volumes are quite a bit lower. So it was something to look at. Traffic volumes on the streets in the immediate vicinity are significantly lower than they were back in the day.
We have a question. Commissioner Langer?
I was just wondering, are these numbers average for like week or through a month or through a year?
Nope. Those are just daily volumes that they take. As long as you pick out a good day, the right day, a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, it's a pretty random. They're usually fairly accurate. And usually, with just some exception, it doesn't really matter whether school's in session or not. In this particular instance, though, a school is fairly close to this location, so maybe it has something to do with it. But generally speaking, 24-hour counts, they really don't care when you take them. Sometimes they have to be adjusted a little bit for proximity to school or proximity to a large generator like a factory or something like that where a lot of people come out. But it's not, usually don't have to.
Commissioner Copeland?
I apologize for not being here last week, and this may be redundant, but since Edmonds is a one-way, are you telling me that the sucker number is 2002 number? Are you telling me on a given day, 2002, that Edmonds has 1,382 let's say, vehicles going up down the street on a given day?
Yes.
But
it's one way that direction.
One-way westbound.
Yeah.
But that 27 number
Yeah.
is people are legally going the wrong way.
Yeah, I
on
wasn't
that
down there
one-way
yet.
section.
Yeah, I understand, it wasn't down there yet, it's at the top, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, was at the top at 1382, on a given day, Edmonds got traffic going that way.
Over
In
24 hours.
2002.
2002, yeah.
Right, over a
I understand
24-hour
what you're saying,
period.
that down at the bottom, that means that you had 27 vehicles going the wrong way. Okay, wasn't that, that's a lot of traffic one way, that's my thought on this.
But it's interesting, it's 27 going the wrong way in 2011 and 27 in 2002. So it's the same 27 people.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
But the important number up there also is that 641
In
is
2011.
11. It's gone down almost 50%.
Yeah.
And it can't all be attributed to just school and
School,
non-school,
yeah,
which Mike will get to later.
Oh, yeah, that was my point, like that, that was my point, is that, and I wasn't looking at the people going the wrong way,
Yeah.
but I was concerned that much traffic in 2002 going on it, that's a lot of traffic.
Over 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look what you had in 2011, you had 599, and that's almost double the next year. 599 is the traffic in 2011, correct?
Uh-huh.
And 1382 is what you had in 2002.
Correct.
So it's half as much.
And, oh, sorry.
Question, Chair.
Commissioner Peoples?
Was an office building functioning in 2002?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's what I know, okay.
Potential, and we talked about that too, where office workers come to the same place every day. They tend to find the path of least resistance because they have an opportunity to experiment, and it suits them to do that. Whereas in a restaurant or even a retail store, where you come there once in a while, you're not hunting for the shortest route through there or whatever. You're not doing that usually.
I'm just saying that if an office building wasn't functioning, that would give some reason of the traffic somehow.
Yeah, we have some numbers for that too. That barely helps too, but it's another addition to the number. You're right.
Yeah, but I'm quite surprised about the 27 figure going the wrong way on the one-way,
Yeah.
because I would have assumed that the fact that the count was done after the office building burned down in 2011, or it actually burned down in
2010, yeah.
But the count going the wrong way is the exact same number as it was in 2002, when the office building was open.
It's residents still. Residents.
Exactly. And so a business down at the corner is not generating wrong way traffic.
No. That's very good.
Next step is getting the license plate.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we can do that. Would be my guess that they may have done that back in the day, so I don't know. Move on, TJ, to the trip generation. Kind of scroll up to that. We have some more discussion about this in a PowerPoint later, but these are the remember, peak hour. Those of you that weren't here, the study, the impact study is based on peak hours, not daily traffic or anything like that. So this is midday, it's kind of lunchtime, and this is the PM, and you're studying it because the volumes on the adjacent roads are pretty high, or higher during those times, so that would be the time when your impact would be the greatest, potentially, because the roadways at those times are operating in the poorest. It is not necessarily the peak time for the generator. In other words, the highest time of the day or the highest day of the year, or whatever it is, that the restaurant would generate traffic. This is the amount of traffic that it generates during the adjacent street peak hour. We have information about how well these correlate and what the peak days are and all that for Golden Corral later. This is the average daily, so you have the number of people that come in and out, number of cars. This is an in and out number. 1532.
Total for the day, or?
Day, for the day. Total in and out. So you divide it in half is really the new trips that are generate. And remember, this business about pass-by too, 43% of the trips that come to a restaurant like this are already out on the street. They're there. They're not new trips out on the street. The traffic that's out there is bringing them in. But the new trips, this is the total number of new trips that you're going to end up with, give or take, with this type of development. So now that you have the new trips, you have to assign it to the roadways and the intersection. When you look in the report, those are the percentage directions of approach. So we can go through that. We need to know where you put these new numbers so that you can figure out the impact on each of the movements, so that you can evaluate the difference between level of service before and level of service after. And then you compare, well, is there a significant difference, or is there any difference? That part where we talked about level of service, A through F kind of thing. And we can skip through all these graphics and things. Turns out, though, that there we go, future operations. If you remember, these were Ds, and this went up 2 seconds overall. That went up about 2 seconds overall. This is a no impact kind of scenario based on level of service.
I'll bring up the comparison.
Yeah, we've got in our PowerPoint there's a comparison of this, so you can see the two side by side. We talked about that last week too. In the report, there's something about traffic queue lengths, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too, but the average queue length for one of the approaches, these are in feet, and there's an average, and then there's a 95th percentile. 95th percentile that says that there's only 5% of the queues during a certain time of day that are actually longer than that number. And so if you're beating this number, if you comply with this number, you're doing a lot better than even the design would necessarily ask you to do. But this is the average queue in feet. You should use about 20 feet for a car, so you can see you don't have very many cars sitting in queue either. That's pretty much it. We talked about it in a lot more detail last time, but I don't know if we need to. If you have questions or you want to talk about some detail,
Through the chair, you said you had a PowerPoint addressing some of the questions.
Oh yeah, we have a PowerPoint addressing all.
Okay, so if you want to go through that,
Yep.
and then we'll open it back to the commissioners for further questions.
Okay. For those of you that were not here last week, there were questions from the commissioners, and there were a couple of questions from the audience, some folks that were from the audience, that indirectly or directly were part of the study, but to make it give you better detail and a better understanding of it, or to make it easier to understand, we've kind of put it into a PowerPoint so we can address that. So this is the first one where you compared existing and future and existing and future. In other words, we had the level of service today and the level of service with the Golden Corral. So this is the midday, the lunchtime. It goes from 6.8 to 8.4. These numbers you won't find that table in the report. You have to look at two tables to figure that out.
Do you have copies of that? I mean, did you?
We can give those to you if you want. No, we didn't bring that. That's a full power on our part. Sorry about that. We'll get those to you. Should we get those?
Just forward them to me, and I'll make sure they...
Okay.
Through the chair, this is at the intersection of Southfield and Edwards. I'm not sure. Is this traffic count on of Edwards?
It's the intersection.
Use that map there, Mike.
It's this intersection that's controlled by a traffic signal. It's this approach, this approach, and that approach.
I was just looking at the eastbound and westbound. I forgot that there were two more lines there.
It's okay. So the eastbound approach, which would be the one across on the west side of the street.
Right.
Remember, we talked about why those were level service D and E is because of not the traffic demand. We know the traffic was low, but the fact that this signal has to get in step with this signal.
Right. No, I don't have any problem with that, because the volume on Edwards is going to be so low that, as compared to the people on, going east and west on 12 Mile Road, it's much worse on 12 Mile Road because you'll have traffic backed up far enough that they can't get through in one light.
Sometimes, right.
I happen to live in the area, and I've been there where I've had 13 light changes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's 12 times level service F.
Tell me about it.
It's not good. That needs to be fixed.
To the chair?
Yes.
Am I understanding this, Mike, again, overall, 6.8 is now, and going to the future, you're gaining, say, 2.4 seconds of delay?
Overall, for the whole intersection, when you weight these overall, this tells you the intersection is operating at level service A today.
Today.
It's going to still operate at level service A. Overall, you're adding 2.4 seconds.
Okay, you only add 2.4 seconds.
Yeah. Or not even, yeah, 2.4.
Well,
So that's a negligible impact. Stop delay per vehicle. That's what that means.
Mike, what is the lowest rating? I see you said D was acceptable. Is D the lowest or F the
F,
lowest?
level
is
service
the lowest.
F is, right, the lowest. What's that total? What's that number?
signalized intersection, 80 seconds is the limit per vehicle.
how much?
80.
That's one you got caught in, Commissioner Dale.
Oh, no, it's longer than that.
Much more severe than that.
Yeah, it's much more severe than that.
What was that number?
80 seconds of stop delay per vehicle. It seems like an eternity if you sit there a minute, so, just so you know, that it feels uncomfortable. But there are days that I come out of my subdivision street, I live in Troy, intersection along Square Lake Road, and the cars can have a big gap. But I sit there, level service D or E all the time. If I'm leaving in the morning at, say, 7 o'clock, it's a pain in the neck. And there's not a lot of cars out there that go that way.
F is the lowest acceptable.
No.
F is just
No,
bad, period.
Yeah, right. You try to
That's
do
what I wanted to
something
know.
if you have level service E and
So
F.
that's just one down from D. D is acceptable, then F is not?
E and F are not acceptable.
E and F is not.
If there's a legitimate
E and
problem.
above is acceptable,
Right.
that's what I wanted to know.
Right. Now, should you fix, in our case, in this particular intersection case, you don't want to try to fix the problem, because it's not a problem. The computer has to figure out, it has to account for that keeping in step business. The odds are that you're not really waiting there that long, but you have to model it the way it is. That's all. And but if you go down to 12 Mile in Southfield, you'd find a kind of a different answer if you did that. You'd probably find some problems there that society, we've decided some of those we're not going to fix them. And frankly, they're probably gotten better over the years, and they haven't done anything else. The same signal operation is there. They've added the cameras, but they used to have loops. So
Main thing the cameras have improved on is when the volume of traffic is much less, like after 11 o'clock at night. With the cameras there, you don't sit there but about 30 seconds, and before it changes.
right. These are the numbers, just so you know, that of that stop delay for vehicle stuff. So maybe that helps. Okay, the counts, remember the dramatic differences in the 24-hour counts on that one graphic, which, I mean, we might want to reference these as we're kind of going through if you want to make notes, in case you want to look at it later, which is figure 4 in the study. The differences are dramatic. I mean, they're half or so, give or take. The first question came out was school in session? Well, it turns out school was in session for the June count in '02. and in the counts taken in 2011, school was not in session. So there is some traffic in there related to the school. There's also some traffic in there related to the office building in 2002. But the differences are nowhere near. Student would account for the total number of trips. This is the student enrollment back in the day. TJ figured this out. The total number of trips in all the directions from the school would be 516 trips. You have a whole lot more of that difference in just one of the movements, let alone all of them going in various directions. Certainly not all of it. Now, there's another part of this too, is that westbound Edwards, west of Lathrop. Here's Lathrop, westbound. There is a peak in here after 6. And so, does that, what does that say? Does that tell you that this is the 2002, this is the 2011? Well, depending upon what time they get to the elementary school, yeah, maybe. But they're usually a little, is this like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock? Might be some, but it's also, there's other traffic in there. It's not a proportion of the 516 daily trips.
Through the chair, if you look at it throughout the day as well, there's a difference from 2002 to 2011 consistently, except for this peak, which is much more dramatic. And then if you look at eastbound, you see that flip in the afternoon.
And it's 6 o'clock in the evening.
Much later.
Looks like to me a lot more people retired.
A lot more people live in Chicago now or something too. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But the numbers are dramatically different. So life is a little bit better on those streets today than it was back in 2002. That's kind of the bottom line. It turns out that you could try to refine it even more, but we've already probably spent more time on it than we needed to on this already.
Through the chair, may I, should I wait? Yeah, just a comment, going back to the chart, so.
Which one?
Basically, it could be the office people going home, office meaning just not that office, local offices around there. Same people using those streets, coming to work and going home.
Could be.
That's what I'm saying.
It's possible, but it's eastbound east of Lathrop, so they'd have to come up off of 12 Mile Road or something, or because we didn't find that many. It's not a huge number of violators between, and it's 6 o'clock, which is a little bit late for the people that are in the office building. I'm not saying that they're all, it's just hard to, there's a conglomeration. I think there's just a lot of cars that are off the road around here, and this is the only place we see this kind of stuff going on. There's some dramatic differences in a lot of places we've looked at counts in the last year or so.
Eastbound Edwards, east of Lathrop.
Yeah.
So it's not the one way, wrong way.
Right. Well, some of them could have been, but you just don't know.
Right.
But right, the number you're looking at it was 485 and now it's 158.
Right.
It's a huge difference. There was some discussion about trip generation and whether Golden Corral is going to make any money and stuff like that. And we needed a comparison of how we forecast the trips versus what Golden Corral can do, and where were we in that forecast? Was the forecast credible? All that kind of stuff. And we were able to get some information from. Well, no, I just want to tell them where we're going with this. We were able to get some information from Golden Corral to help us forecast what they're actually going to do based on a couple of other stores. This is the difference in office. We kind of guesstimated at 45,000 square feet because it was a one-story office building, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. And about 45,000. Again, you can go to the trip generation handbook and forecast those trips and be real close with that number based on an office building. So difference really is only in the daily, and the interesting part of it is that Golden Corral has turnover. People are there, they're not there all day eating. They're there for an hour or so, at the most, and it turns over. So you end up with more trips here, but the peak numbers are not dramatically different during the worst times of the day. It's kind of the bottom line. Yeah. We talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago, but the other day we talked also about the peak hour of the generator, not the peak hour of adjacent street traffic. So there are some more trips that could be forecast, and possibly it's going to be higher, but that's when the traffic on the adjacent roads is a lot lower. So, kind of from a traffic planning standpoint, if you can avoid things that are going to generate a lot of trips during the worst times of the adjacent roads, that's a good thing to do. So, if you have a restaurant that certainly generates trips, if you can have that, their worst case is not when, say, an office building is, or even a residential development. The worst case for those is when the adjacent roads are the worst. In this case, it's not.
If I could, through the chair, on that slide, and your comment, as I recall last week, it was stated that the people that come to, I forgot the kind of restaurant it is. Buffet style, thank you. Come early, which means to me 5 to 7 as far as eating, or even 4 to 7, and which is pretty much the rush hour. And so a lot of the main traffic going there for the evening meal to this type of restaurant would be at the same time as your high volume going home traffic.
I don't disagree with that. That's true. I mean,
So that seems to be opposite of what you just said.
No, what I'm saying is that the worst time, the time when a Golden Corral generates the most trips is not that 4 to 6 weekday PM peak hour. No, it isn't. No, well, we can go on. We can show it. We can show it. We've got data from them. These are forecasts based on ITE. Let's look at what the information from the Golden Corral shows something a little different. Midday and PM. These are the numbers that were forecast based on the information we got from the Golden Corral, where they estimate that they have 2.25 people per vehicle, and that would be based on that, and how much activity they actually had, and was it just one site or 2 sites or one site? But it's recent, right? Relatively recent information. These are the inbound trips. This is what they forecast in vehicle, or this has been their experience. This is what we forecast. So is it verified? It's kind of conservative. Actually, our numbers are a little higher than what they're showing. So, and it comes from sales receipts and experience in their store.
Mr. Copeland, of course.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused too, because we'll say the high peak hours on Edmonds and Southfield, at that area, is from 5 to 6. That's where that area is peak. And I'm in line with Commissioner Bell is going. That 4 to 6 hours assumed to be the same time that people would be coming into the Golden Corral.
I guess I'm not disagreeing.
But those numbers don't say that.
No, I think if I could,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, through the chair,
I don't understand those numbers.
is that based on the data from the transportation engineers, we come up with an average. But based on the actual sales receipts of the store, which they plugged in, which is more correct for this particular use,
Right.
their actual sales numbers are less than what we forecasted during the peak hours.
Okay, all right.
So it's, what I think he's saying is not as bad as is,
The numbers say they are.
yeah, it could have been worse.
Okay, all right.
But it's actually, the actual numbers of forecast based on actual sales is less.
I'm sorry, I may have kind of confused that, but there's another kind of aspect of this, is that this is their peak day, which is Mother's Day. And one of the things that I guess kind of have to keep in mind is that, let's say, the difference between what we used and the worst day, what impact would that have on the level of service? You probably wouldn't be able to measure it.
Right.
It wouldn't make any difference.
Put it the way you put it, so I understand.
Okay.
But the numbers didn't seem to do the job what you were saying.
And here's another thing, too, is that these studies, you don't look at the worst day possible. You never do that. You look at what traditionally are you going to expect? And it's a typical kind of weekday operation. You don't study shopping centers at Christmas time unless you're trying to figure out how much parking you need. But you don't study them and say, oh, gosh, this is going to be terrible. Well, Somerset traffic backs up all the way to the freeways, I-75 sometimes during Christmas season. And you don't see that any other time, around Thanksgiving and Christmas. You just don't see that regardless. So we felt pretty good that our forecast was conservative and basically kind of verified where we thought we were going to be with this, based on the experience from them. Now, here's another thing, too, is that the traditional and accepted practice approach to studying this would not necessarily, if we had an awful lot of information and we had some sort of unique use that maybe IT didn't have that information, but there's so many more studies with similar kinds of restaurants that are in ITE that you wouldn't necessarily use that information from Golden Corral the way we did in this case. But we're just trying to help you verify that what we did was good and that we're clearly in the ballpark on forecasting the traffic. We tried to make this not so blurry, but we also tried to explain this last week, and it was not real good in the sense it was difficult for people to understand. So this is an aerial. This is the office building before it burned down. Do we get this off of Google or someplace? I don't know. So this is Edward Street here. The yellow is the location of the new driveways shown on the site plan. And this white is the existing driveway based on the office building being there. This is the driveway that's cut a kitty corner across that has the left turn prohibited that we recommended prohibiting the left turn. Our left turn coming out, this left turn, is also, we're committing to prohibiting that. And so the question is, there's this driveway which we talked about, and then this driveway that came up in the subsequent discussion with some of the folks that were in the audience. And the issue there was, with the driveway here, is this suddenly being severely impacted by this driveway being located here? That was one issue that came up. We actually have improved that, if you look at it, because the distance is quite a bit different. It's over 100 feet further away. This left turn is already prohibited. We allow this left turn, that's our left turn for the new site. So this has gotten better, not worse. Now, this distance right here, this 54 feet, if you look in the study, that's the queue, the 95th percentile traffic queue in feet of the traffic demand that's going to be here making that left turn. So it's almost the worst case scenario left turn. It's only 54 feet because that volume's not very much. At the traffic signal controlled intersection, we're allowing this left, that left prohibited, we're prohibiting that left. This is all the scale, so it's not, so you all have a kind of a picture of how it's going to operate, except this driveway is going away.
Through the chair, just as a wrinkle, and I don't know if you just started this when your discussions for road commission for Oakland County, but on the drawing board, at sometime near future, they're proposing to put a landscape median in, which would eliminate the southbound left-hand turn, right? And would that even,
Well, it might.
I mean, there might be a Michigan left, but,
Indirect left, yeah.
right, wouldn't that even improve the conditions further than what they are?
Oh, well, that's gonna eliminate all the problems, because you won't be able to get in here. It's gonna get rid of all that stuff.
It was brought up by our deputy city administrator, and it should probably be mentioned somewhere in the report,
Okay,
okay, just as a possible,
all right.
but I just wanted to mention that for your information as well.
No, I totally agree with that, but that's 10 to 15 years down the road.
It's still, I don't know if it's that far out, Mr. Bell, based on,
I'm just going by what the last I heard.
They're working on the design, I know that much.
Well, they
Road
did, in
Commission
fact,
is-
it was ready to be built, and then the bottom fell out of the economy, and all of a sudden, my understanding, it was pushed back another 10 years.
however, just again, we're going through the environmental review process, and the city has been asked to participate in the public hearing. So even though I would have agreed with you a few months ago, they're actively going through the environmental assessment. So our engineers have been attending those meetings. And when I discussed that this traffic impact study was presented, they said make sure that is at least noted for the record, and that it's discussed, and that's when I bring it up.
I would welcome it being reduced, not for it to happen next year.
The last thing, I guess, that comes out of this is that this is the location of the driveway on Edwidge, which is gonna line up, although it's blurry, and I apologize for that, it's gonna line up with the driveway to the commercial site on the south side of Edward. So, I guess there was one other thing about this, right, TJ? Was the southbound, the analysis of this driveway shows that we'll have a queue of one car there. So that's a car there in perspective, and the scale showing you what you're going to have. Remember, this is already prohibited, that left turn into there. This is our left turn going into here. People, there's no conflict with the maximum queue here, and we've actually significantly improved the operation to get into there.
That was why I was asking for you to bring that like that.
I know,
In
it's
my
great.
mind, it seemed like moving the driveway down was gonna make it a better situation. And I see that.
Yeah, it was great you did that, and we probably should have done that, and maybe.
And if you could make sure, I don't know if we'll get it, but the council will get this, you need to make sure you have that, like you gave us this.
As an addendum?
All those different things, yeah.
Okay.
Add to it, because I thought you were gonna have them for us today.
Okay.
You know, to change it.
To the chair. Again, I apologize for not being here last week before I discussed this. And my understanding, the white is current, and
Yes.
the yellow is what's proposed.
Yes.
Reading this report. That was where we thought was going.
The only thing is that this is,
The yellow is what I'm concerned about, to make it more convenient and economic to get in and out of there without disturbing Southfield.
right.
And that's where the yellow is at.
Mhm.
Again, that's right.
Just so you know, this is gonna go away, though, this one.
Yeah, I understand, but like I said, but my concern is that the white is what's currently there, which will go away, but the yellow is what will be there if this proposal goes through.
Yes.
And that was what we're looking at, to make sure that we didn't construct or screw up 12 Southfield Road. That's perfect,
Right.
in my mind.
Through the chair, I can't read the numbers that are placed adjacent to the blue and the red hash,
This is 72,
72,
170 from there to there.
okay, which means 72 from 170 is what you've got in the red hash.
Yeah, that's the additional, you're adding about 100 feet to that separation
Okay.
by bringing it down to the center line of
What I'm
the,
getting at is that I know for a fact that there's as many as 5 or 6 cars at a time in the turn lane, the left turn lane, going north to turn west. And that's up to 125, 150 feet of stacked cars.
turning to go into here.
Yes.
Well, we're helping it then.
Well, you're helping it, but it's not solving the problem, is what I'm getting at. The problem is that you've got up to 150 feet of center turn lane that is completely blocked during certain times of the day. And when you've got 150 feet of it blocked, how much of it is left to get into the turn lane and turn left going east?
Okay, well, like I said, the analysis shows the queue is going to be one vehicle, so you only need 20 feet.
Well, it takes more than 20 feet to get into a turn lane and sit there.
Is there a conflict? And the question, I guess, is maybe we have to figure this out. We don't have data for this turn. We didn't figure that driveway out. City staff, no one thought that was.
I don't have data for it either, except what I've been told and what I've observed personally.
Okay. Well, that I can't answer what kind of a challenge you might have with that.
Is it in office use now, is my understanding?
Well, it's an office use, and part of that, half of the office building is a school with a lot of entirely drop off and pick up.
My thought, and the reason I posed that question is that if it is an office, then the incoming traffic that would be in that fire lane, most likely in the morning, when the proposed use is not active. Whether or not
That's not accurate because of the use of the office building.
Right. So, we don't have information for that. Maybe we need to have it before we get there next Monday, I don't know. We could probably figure that out.
Yeah, and through the chair, again, it's a simple, it's the layperson's common sense. You've got so much people coming southbound trying to turn left into the restaurant, and so many people going northbound trying to turn left into that driveway. There's only so much space that they can stack one way or the other.
Right.
The concern that was raised last week was the potential for a head-on collision.
Right.
And bottom line is, by, whatever hook or crook, if you can figure out by next week, and you already probably know your gut, but is this, are we creating a worse situation? Is it is it within tolerable limits? Is the conflict perceived, but it's not real because of the flow in and out during the morning, PM and stuff? That's, I guess, the gist of this issue.
Well, the issue, the way I see it, is that taking this driveway, moving it down here, adding an extra 100 feet of storage for people to come into this site versus having it up here,
There's no
is
question
a
that
huge
it improves
improvement.
it. I'm just saying that it doesn't eliminate the problem.
No, it doesn't eliminate it.
Okay, that's all I'm saying, and therefore my recommendation is a right in and right out only.
Oh, I see. I don't know if I agree with that, but we'll figure it out and see if you feel better about it next week or 2 weeks, because we need to know that demand.
Is there something more that we're going to have for me to analyze?
No, you brought this up tonight. We didn't know that you were going
I've
to be
been knowing
concerned
it
about
for
that.
weeks.
Well, I didn't know that that was an issue for you. We thought we were sowing.
I went out there and stepped it off when I first got the plan. I've got it marked right here on my old plan. I've been knowing this for weeks and tried to point it out to the commission. Went in one ear and out the other.
Well, I'll get a little more solid information on whether you and I are on the same side on that one or not. Okay? We'll look at that and see if we're making it. We can't eliminate the problem. Otherwise, you can eliminate access for everybody, and the life gets real good. But on the other hand, we are doing all we can to, one, allow the property owner to have access. They have a right to access. And two, have we shown that there's any operational issues that are out there? We're saying, well, there might be, but we're improving it. We don't have to fix it. We have to improve it or not make it worse. In our case, we're improving it. We're not making it worse. So that's kind of the way I see it.
Commissioner Griffiths, you have a question?
Yeah, I see you're improving the distance, and that helps. You had some stats. Half the traffic, I believe, came from the north and half came from the south.
Yeah, we have a...
So, I mean, just eliminating traffic that's coming from the north is just an undue burden, I think.
We're not eliminating. You've got a traffic light 100 feet to the south.
Well, you'd have to go down to...
Have to go down to the traffic light and go in there.
You have to go down through here and then go in here.
Which makes it all safe.
I agree with them that it's a much better condition than it was.
Oh, there's no question that it improves it.
I mean, you could eliminate businesses on the other side of the street.
Right. It's as long as you're not making it worse, and you're doing something to improve the situation, that's what you should be doing.
Let me clarify what
It's
Roy.
not the,
what
I'm
Roy's
sorry.
saying. Okay, Roy, so what you're saying is, possibly a right turn only, once Edwards, to get into the, restaurant?
No, it'd be a right in, right out for this driveway is what he's saying.
Right in, to the driveway on Southfield Road, make it a right turn in only and right turn out only. No left-hand turn to get into.
No left-hand turn.
the
He
Southfield.
wants that left-hand, he thinks this southbound left turn should be eliminated,
Right.
and we disagree.
Oh, so you're saying if you're
So then
coming
you go to
from,
Edwards and make the right.
north going south, you
Go
can
to
turn into Edwards,
Right.
okay.
And,
Okay.
right. And then if you want to go south when you exit, go out the Edwards exit at the light and turn south.
Okay.
Makes it safe for
I don't know how
everybody.
the people that live
Let's
on
move on. We might have a little more fuel for, or maybe put a little bit of salt on this one, or a little bit of sugar, I don't know. We looked at reported accidents over the most recent 3 years where accidents have been reported to determine whether or not there's been an issue out there, particularly with the kind of accident you're talking about. And one of the folks from the last week. So this is a 3-year, this is a traditional way to look at an accident problem too. You get 3 years, that's a statistically significant period. So this is a proper analysis, the accepted practice, this is how you would look at it, of reported accidents. In that area, there's an average of 10 crashes a year. And 83% of them are property damage only. 14 are C injury, and there was 1 B injury. C is an injury, but it's not an incapacitating injury. A B injury is getting a little bit worse. Somebody might have bumped their elbow, and the next one, and the B injury, they might have bumped their elbow, but it was bleeding. When it's incapacitating, that would be A. We didn't have any of those, and there were no fatalities. 62% of all the accidents were rear-end accidents at the signal. The signals promote rear-end accidents. You're supposedly giving up rear ends for what they are, maybe left turn type accidents. No reported center lane head-on accidents at all. So the issue that we're trying to address, or that we're all trying to design our brains out on this thing, that's not there. It wasn't there when the driveways were real close and the peak volumes were.
The exit coming out of the office building, the one that you're doing away with, has a sign at it that says exit only.
I understand. But our big thing was the center lane. There was a big issue about accidents in the center lane. There haven't been any. That's all.
Well, by being exit only, it eliminates the southbound traffic turning left.
I understand.
Okay.
But we were trying to deal with the driveway that was a little further north on the west side, and the so-called chaos that was going to happen in the center lane for left turn, which it turns out that's not happening, or hasn't happened in the last 3 years. Is that it?
No.
Yeah, that's it. We will give you all copies of this
Through me.
for you. Do you want us to print them for you, or you just want to send you these?
Just send me an email.
Send you an email.
I have to prepare a packet for the council. I'll
Okay.
be presenting to the council next, and I'll forward it to the commission. Since this is a study session for the benefit of the commission, I'd ask, through the chair, commissioners have any additional questions. Then, this is not a public hearing, but we can open it up for some public questions after the commission has been done, and I would suggest that we do that at that time.
Commissioner, any more questions?
I guess in summary, pretty much what you're saying is that the overall impact on the traffic is going to be an A level, and only going to increase about 2.4 per second. And what you found by that is one car probably turning in red light from that
In
one.
a queue, right.
In a queue.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing in the other turn, the opposite should also end up something similar to that. So I don't really see a problem.
Right.
I don't know what's going on. The levels are really low. So,
If I could piggyback on that, could you just review the recommendations, though, that you're making with regards to the left-hand turns, and there's an additional turn lane and separation, if you could just do that as well. So, as you stated, the overall study is negligible as far as difference, but they are making some recommendations to improve situations. If you could cover that.
Okay, these are, without the proposed development, there's a couple of things that need to get done that we recommend. This area right in here is kind of a rough, it's very rough.
You want to do that here? Does it show up on there? Yeah, it's right here. Okay.
This area right in here, under existing, is difficult, and it's helpful for the operation of the intersection, or that approach, if you can get lefts and rights there. And right now, this is real rough, and it doesn't necessarily promote that, so we're recommending that gets fixed. It's not something necessarily the Golden Corral has caused. That's not the case. It's just an existing condition that should be fixed that'll make this thing operate better.
The radius?
The
You're
radius,
talking about the
yeah.
radius.
Yep.
An extra lane, a right-hand turn.
But if you
lane.
pave it and you smooth it out and make it work and stripe it, it'll work better.
Yeah, it needs a right-hand turn lane. This already has a left-hand and a go straight.
Right, but it's not very good.
But the right-hand turn lane is non-existent practically.
The other thing we talked about that's an existing condition is this, the no left turn for this driveway right here. Yeah. We need to have that improved. It's faded, actually it's fallen over into the bushes, at least last time we looked at it, it was. So it would be good to, they've actually straightened it up because it wasn't, or it was straight then, now it's not too straight as far as I remember.
It's in about the same condition as all the other signage on that site, regrettably.
Okay, so those are kind of the existing condition situation.
Through the chair, Mike, if you haven't already, could you just have that conversation with Dave Wozniak? Because he's the traffic engineer, and he could get some priority to get those signs upgraded.
Okay, that's something we will do, yes.
And even before this, development goes forward. Sure. I'm sure that's something he could swap out with some signs.
Yep, well, it's not his job to do it, but yeah, it's the county, those are road commission signs.
Follow up,
Yep. And then the recommendation is that they construct their driveway consistent with what the road commission wants. The road commission has standard design practices that they want that you have to follow, so we recommend that they do that, which they won't get a permit if they don't. So they have to submit their plans to the road commission for approval when they apply for a driveway.
Mike, let me say, this traffic study, which we've been talking about, this is great. I mean,
Thank you.
when sitting home reading, it took me a long time, because I had to go through it 3 or 4 times to understand it was so detailed. But I think, from my point of view personally, it answers the major questions of that area where the proposed restaurant will be, being able to get out and in. I applaud you guys. Great job, a lot of detail. Some of that I didn't understand, to be honest with you. But it did prove a lot of points, and I don't exactly know what the resident questions they asked, but looking at this, it does not show that, number one, that any more traffic will be there, or the Edmonds would be impacted, in which we knew that there was a lot of problems with the residents in itself, and that showed that 27 was going the wrong way. So, personally, I think great job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say that, what Mr. Bill rose of going to 12 Mile and making the turn, some people are going to do that anyway. When they get used to going there and they see the way the traffic's going, they'll go to 12 instead of staying. I mean, they'll go to Edwards. They'll be on Southfield, but they'll go up to Edwards and make that turn where the light is, if it's that congested. There'll be times when it will not be congested, and they should be allowed to go in at the drive that.
Right, they're also going to be able to make that turn in the shadow of the signal, too. When northbound stops, the northbound Southfield will stop at the signal.
Right.
You'll be able to turn in there, too.
And the other thing is the residents have that concern with more traffic. That's why they want it just to come in on Edwards only. That's my That's why I would like you to be able to come in on Southfield,
Right.
from Southfield.
Right.
But, when the traffic is really heavy like that, they're gonna go to Edwards for the light. So, that's just my take on it.
Right. I agree.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, we appreciate you coming back with some good information and, helping us out.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, to the public. I just want to say, thanks a lot for, breaking it down for us in more detail.
You're welcome.
I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. Great job. I think it made it a lot easier for everybody to understand, a lot better the second time around. Now we open up to the public, I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there.
And if I could, through the chair, after you've recognized the public, please direct your questions to the chair. State your name and address first, and then he'll direct the response to the consultant.
Mr. Chair, my name is Billy Parrish.
Okay, stand up for us.
My address is 17550 Edwards Avenue. And for purposes of the drawing, I am at Edwards Street.
This
down
is Edwards
below.
Street. How about up here?
Okay, so I'm the property just east,
Right where your finger is.
area, right where your finger is.
Right here?
But I'm representing the voice for the folks along Lathrop, both south and north of Edwards, and the voice of folks east of Lathrop, because those are the folks that have been showing up at meetings before. Unfortunately, many of them didn't know about this meeting, or as Terry said, they got phone calls, but the timing was not right for them. So here's my voice and their voice. The biggest concern that we have as residents is the flow of traffic along Edwards. Now, I didn't hear an awful lot other than the presentation of the numbers. I didn't hear much in terms of what might be done to correct that flow east to west on Edwards. Now, your numbers show that the volume, their numbers show that the volume is significantly less than the year 2002. 50% was the number I heard, basically. Now, I can accept those numbers because they're based on, I imagine, the road sensors that were put up. I think it's based on the road sensors, because I remember there were road sensors put up for a period of time. They were put up on a Monday afternoon, and they were removed on a Thursday afternoon. So the road sensors were out basically for about 3.5 days, which would allow tracking the flow of traffic day and evening and night. Unfortunately, it didn't capture the flow of traffic for weekends, when it could be heavier. And it also missed the flow of traffic for the school, which is closed. And it also missed the flow of traffic for the previous business that was there, okay? So I don't think that the number is going to be accurate in terms of when a Golden Corral is built there. If you go back to the numbers from 2002, those numbers might be more accurate for the flow along Edwards versus the one for 2011 because of the survey being done during the school year as well as when the office was there. The other concern about that study is that it was done during the summer hours, not only from the school standpoint, but during the summer hours when people are on vacation. So it would also have a decreased amount of traffic flow. So our concern is the flow that's going to be on Edwards. And by the way, one of the things that sort of gets missed, and I don't know how you guys how they could have captured it, but once that restaurant opens up there and traffic is flowing westbound on Edwards, we're going to have an increased amount of traffic flow from Greenfield to Southfield to get to the restaurant throughout the day, but particularly in the hours of the evening when we normally want quiet time on the block, and particularly on the weekends when we have quiet time on the block currently, because of the business that was there would be closed after 5, after 6, and closed on weekends. So the nature of the restaurant would bring traffic there during the time that we traditionally had quiet time on the block and throughout the neighborhood. And it's going to increase because unlike the business that was there previously, the volume from Golden Corral will be significantly greater, and because it will be people coming not because they come to work there or because they live in the neighborhood, but because they're coming to a restaurant during peak times, we will get an increase there too. I know these analysis couldn't gauge that, but I got to express the concern that we still feel the increase in traffic is going to be there, and and it's not really an acceptable situation for us to have an increase. I suspect it will be more than the numbers from 2002, and I suspect significantly more, but I'm guessing just like anybody else here because I don't have any data. But just the nature of the business will bring folks using the through street of Edwards to get to the restaurant because it's an easy access. And you know, an interesting thing, and this is going back to a statement that says nothing to do with Golden Corral, but I've talked to neighbors who said the reason why that street was changed from a two-way to a one-way was because of traffic. But one of the conditions that was quoted to them at the time it was changed was that Webster would be made into a through street at the next opportunity, which was when the trailer park disappeared. But it didn't happen. So we still have that traffic that was never solved by traffic plans that had come through this group and gone through the city. And now we're going to have the problem with Golden Corral as a result of the increased flow of traffic when that happens. So in each one of these cases, it seems like the residents are getting the shaft.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make you say, we're listening and having this meeting tonight, but the things you're talking about now, when it goes to council, that's the time to tell that, because we've already spoken on this. So, you know, we're hearing it, but I'm thinking about what you're saying. We need to, when they're having their study, I don't know what they do on their studies, I don't think they let as many people speak. I haven't seen that hardly at all. But they do have their meetings, so you might want to make note of the things you're talking about. The only reason I'm saying this is a lot of people want to come up and speak. We've already had our public meeting. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. So this was just for them to present their traffic impact study. So now you've got some of it, and they're going to still do it.
I can make it available to you.
So I just wanted to say that because a lot of people may get up thinking that we still have some say. We don't.
Oh,
So,
well, I understand. That's why I said, I realize that their study is done and hear the concern. Appreciate it.
Before we go to any additional comments, I want to try to take the points of Mr. Parrish and have them address it. Okay. Typically, Mike, what is the average volume of traffic on weekends versus weekday? Is it tend to go up or down? You know, you've got
Weekends goes down.
Okay, so
Significant.
typically, that the Southfield road counts on weekends would be less.
Oh, a lot less.
Okay. Then
12 Mile and Greenfield
right.
and all the other roads too.
and part of the reason the issue was about school. The school's in session Monday through Friday, so volumes would be up during the Monday through Friday and down on the weekends.
Right.
And then I think you already addressed the differences between the former office and the proposed restaurant.
Right.
Okay, so those were three of your concerns. Now, specifically, Mr. Parrish had mentioned the expected traffic westbound from Greenfield to Southfield along Edwards. And based on standard practices and your review and the traffic counts, what is your opinion on the volume going up or down, and the level of service changing when this is fully operating? If you could address that to the chair.
Okay, we did talk about this a little bit. Maybe I glossed over it a little too quickly, probably, and I probably should not have. But we talked about office traffic having a constant destination to the same place. And they're coming to that place at a time when the adjacent street traffic is the worst. They tend to look for places, if it suits them, to cut through in order to avoid delays. Unfortunately, some people do that. Not a lot, not all people, but some people do that. So they're coming to their office building when the traffic is the worst, the delays are the worst on the adjacent streets. That would cause them, and they have the opportunity over and over and over again to look for routes that might minimize or shorten their travel time. If I'm driving down and I want to go to the Golden Corral, and I know that it's where it is, and I'm coming down Greenfield Road from Troy, do I know that I should, and I'm not going, is there any reason whatsoever that I would want to lengthen my travel time or cause driving through a neighborhood, I would get off of Greenfield Road and cut through, or would I take Greenfield to 12 Mile to Southfield and get there in half the time? I wouldn't do that. I would stay on the main road. The only reason you're going to get more traffic maybe on Edwards from the neighborhood would be from the neighborhood, the people that know the route that come that way all the time. So that's not going to be a big, suddenly you put the Golden Corral there and we're going to have all kinds of cut-through traffic. The office building and routine employees are the ones who cause cut-through traffic in places. And frankly, I bet that volume has gone down quite a bit over the years because you no longer have 12 times level service F at those intersections anymore. It might be down to 3, but it's still, so that condition I don't believe is, shouldn't be a concern. We have the numbers too. I mean, we were going to go through this. These are existing counts. If you look in the study, this is figure 3. Remember, midday and PM. There's not a lot of people going that way to begin with right now. So, are we going to get more people coming in and going out right here with our restaurant? Yeah, we have that. But you can look and see that the numbers going out of that approach are not really that great. For an hour, that's hour. So 79 cars in an hour.
And those are all going westbound on Edwards, you're saying?
They're approaching, so they came from over here, or they came from here. Most of them from this retail thing right here.
No.
The bank.
Oh, because of the bank, you're saying?
The bank, yeah. They have access.
Well, there was an earlier drawing that showed from Lathrop Street through, and I know, I did see that.
Those are 24-hour counts.
Okay.
So those are the total numbers over a whole 24-hour period.
Okay.
So, does that help you out at all?
Well, you know, in the whole scheme of things, I know that they covered the A, B, C, D of traffic flow. And what bothered me was, and the reason why I mentioned the one-way street and Edwards being a through street is, I think that street gets more traffic than any average, as you say, residential street in Southfield. Just because it is a cut-through and because it's a through between Greenfield and Southfield. So the numbers for traffic are very high just because. I've been on other residential streets in Southfield, and I can sit there for an hour and no cars go by.
Let me throw a little something out on that one too, just because maybe you don't know, but the average single-family residential house in the United States generates nearly 11 trips a day.
11 trips a day.
Per house.
Per house?
Per house.
I don't.
You
I
don't.
Put any place in that one.
I used to. I mean, I had times when I had 2 or 3 teenagers at home. I had probably close to 50 trips a day the way that went. But on the average, and that's information to know, is that you're going to end up, especially if you're a street that kind of leads to a major intersection or a major road, you're going to have, the closer you get to the major road, the larger the volume's going to be, because the people are leaving their houses and exiting the subdivision. So I don't disagree with the other part that, you know, those volumes certainly back in 2002, they were pretty high. But I worked as the city traffic consultant for the city of Birmingham since 1986. And I can tell you that these residential streets and the volumes on Birmingham residential streets, they're about the same. The volumes are what they are. If you're on a street with just a few houses on it, you only have a few cars on it. If you're on a street that serves a large neighborhood, you're going to have more. But none of them are, 4,000 or 5,000 or something silly like that. If there is, you have a problem that you need to fix.
Okay, I think we can move on off that point. Yes, I think you made your point very clear.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I was just concerned with the distance from the light to the left turn out of the driveway. Oh, I'm sorry, Fred Bunker, 24201 Garner Street. I'm really not that interested, but where the proposed new driveway that'll allow left turn traffic, a lot of times you'll come into a situation where there is a left turn and there's a car that's blocking not only north and south, but straddling the left turn, waiting to merge over to head southbound.
That guy's making an illegal maneuver.
Yeah, well,
Get the
and
coupon.
similar, these cut-throughs are well-known, and with gas prices today, people figure, hey, I'll put it in neutral, I'll put it in low, I'll drive through this, Edwards Street to get to my restaurant, and not even face that traffic on Southfield and 12 Mile. I'm the kind of person who would rather cautiously and at 30 miles an hour, ever increasingly with gas prices. We're not talking about getting there fast as much as we're talking about getting there to save money on the meal economically, and a little more common sense being used to use what we know are quiet, less likely to be in a rear end on Edwards than you would be on, say, the other two major streets there.
Well,
This is an offer of how reality works and how a driveway that close to a stop sign or a red
Through the
light
chair, Mr.
might
Bunker,
cause a...
Mr. Bunker, this is not a public hearing, and
Okay.
we want to give the neighbors and adjacent citizens an opportunity to speak. And your issue is coming up next, so with all due respect.
Yeah, I'm just
so we're
commenting
not
on
here till
road
midnight.
conditions and setbacks of
That's fair, but
business
this
and
is not a public
residential.
hearing, and I don't want to get into a long discourse back and forth.
Sure.
Does,
Observation.
anyone else have a comment on the subject here?
I don't have a comment, but I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
If you could pull up the last slide on that accident again. Scott Griffin, 29423 Southfield Road. If it would be really helpful for me, you may all know this because you do this all the time, but where is this data from? I've heard last week and this week standard practices about 100 times, industry standards about 100 times, and very common. It may be common to you, and you may know what all the standards are, but it would really be helpful if there were references that we could then look up and see if that's accurate or where it came from. Or, I've been online, had my assistant online all this last week, and looking at all kinds of information, but there's no way to rebut this information if there's no reference. There's no, and again, you may know it all. It's unfamiliar to me. So
Through the chair, we'll take one at a time if we could.
Okay.
I know the study references ITE, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Institute of Traffic Engineers. Transportation
it's on the
Engineers.
website today.
Institute of Transportation Engineers.
But they have about 20 million pages on the website. Is there what data did that come from? What report did that come from? What year? Is that from what section of Southfield Road, northbound, southbound?
It's standard from their, they publish reports on a regular basis based on averages for certain types of land uses.
But this was a
throughout the year.
specific number of accidents in a
That's
year.
the second question I'm going to get to.
Okay.
So a lot of the data that is average standards that they're referred to is from this, the ITE reports, and they come out, so they say, based on a survey of 100 fast foods of 10,000 square feet with a certain volume, this is AM, PM, midday, PM peaks, and those are the standards they use. So the report references that data several times. Then there is in the PowerPoint presentation was the 3-year accident data, and through the chair, I'll have Mr. Lavity respond to where that is, and it's referencing SEMCOG's traffic crash report.
Okay, so that's from SEMCOG.
The accident reports are submitted to SEMCOG by the city. City Police Department fills out a traffic crash report for every accident that happened. And annually, actually it may happen more than annually, they submit all that information, and the SEMCOG centralizes it for all of the jurisdictions within, and all the roadways within the SEMCOG.
Okay, so this is my point. This is very helpful.
You can get this.
Okay, no, it's great, but I just didn't know where. And it's really helpful to see that when the report said 0 head-ons, here it shows 2. When it said most of it was rear end, here it shows 5 total rear end and 32
Don't
swipes.
start
Mike,
that.
No, I'm going through the report. Yeah, I'm just asking these. This is my question, because we were told one thing, now we see it here, and it looks different.
Okay. Now, Mr. Laverty, if you
Wanna-
or TJ, you want to respond?
Through the chair, yes, the numbers are different here than what are shown in the report, because what you're seeing on the screen right now is the entire segment between 12 Mile Road and 13 Mile Road. The report that was, the presentation that was done was specific to the segment of Southfield Road, which we were asked to study, which is between Edward and the driveway on the west side of Southfield Road to the northwest side.
Could we,
So
since
we're
we're talking
one
about,
block
the
span, basically.
but since we're talking about that safety, can we get a copy of that report? I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? I mean, I'm not making any accusations, I'm just trying to understand. There's so many times that it's been said, it's real standard, it's real common. How do we know?
Since you, since there are about 3 different reports you're looking for, can we, and Mike just gave you one, and the chair just gave one, give you the web to go on to look at this so you can
Sure.
see it for yourself?
Sure.
Okay, you just, I need to write this down, because you.
No, I've got the ITU website,
Okay, then
but,
you got Simca for the traffic,
right, but,
write that one down. So
just in all fairness.
Yeah, that's what
If
I'm
you
saying,
went
so
to the ITE website, you could be on there for 3 weeks and never find this report. If you went to the SEMCOG website, do you know how rich that site is?
Yeah, you have to go down and find the tab, what you're looking for, and tap over, and that brings up the information. Not trying to be funny, the same thing you did here. That's the same input data we gotta go through.
So through the chair, to make it simple, we'll take the questions that you have. I'll work with the traffic engineer, and he'll provide me with the websites, and I have your contact information. I forward you the traffic study, and I will forward you the data sources.
If they're citing a specific report on a specific segment of road, it should be available. You shouldn't have to say it's somewhere on the SEMCOG website. It should be, they're getting the information from somewhere, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, point well taken.
That's just one
And,
question, that's just
we'll
one
get
question.
that information.
Okay. Second, can you go to the slide that shows the opposing properties? It was just before that. Thanks. I thought what you asked for last week was to show the impact of the potentially overlapping traffic in the center lane. When it was being stated that they're improving the situation, because right now, the traffic's going here and here, but now they're extending that, so it shouldn't be as bad. And I see several of you nodding their head, and I think, I must not be getting this right. I don't understand. Right now, you can turn left into here, and you can turn left here, not here. You cannot turn into here. There are 2 big signs here that say you can't turn into there. So it's not going from here to here, it's getting worse. Right now, it's a left turn here and a left turn here. They want to make a left turn here. It's worse, and not better. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Yep.
Since here, well, I understand, and to me, it's adding a turn. So to me, in my little small brain, you just gave 2, and when you add another, you add a cutoff. So
You can't turn left into here right now.
Right. That was what we looked at now.
You can turn left here.
Right, you're talking about the light. That's
Now they're adding turning left here.
So does that improve it?
No. So what happens now is you've got cars coming here at 45 and then slowing down, getting into the left turn lane to turn here. Cars coming here at 45, slowing down to turn left and go into this lane. I don't know about how you all drive. When I go to an intersection, I don't go to the middle of the intersection and then turn back. At the beginning of the intersection, I wait for the light or the traffic to clear or whatever, and then I go. So it would be here, and it would be here. Right? So it's a much, much shorter area that we're talking about. And I guess what I thought was, it was asked last week, what is the length of a car for queuing? How many cars would this represent while they're moving? And how many cars, what length, and when you're slowing in, what's the appropriate amount of time when you go to turn left in a center turn lane and you're slowing down? How far is that? Because, I mean, they're going to overlap, I think, right? Between here and here? And if they're turning like this, aren't they going to overlap? You're getting into that lane? That's what we're talking about. I thought that's what was coming back.
And again, through the chair, this is the jurisdiction of the Road Commission of Oakland County. They're the ones that are the permitting agency. They're the ones who will dictate where the driveway is, and based on their standards, whether they'll permit it or they're not. If it's not safe, it doesn't meet their tolerances, it won't be permitted. So ultimately, regardless of how much debate we have here tonight, I'm comfortable with, to date, the explanation. That doesn't mean we might not need to investigate further. But ultimately, it's the Road Commission of Oakland County to make that call.
Right.
Whether it's safe or not, whether it's gonna...
So to you, you have enough information to make a determination that that's safe?
Ultimately, it's, regardless if this body or the city, the Road Commission of Oakland County does the permitting on where the driveway location is. And as part of this study, it's an education for us on the volumes, the land use, and those patterns. But even with the input of the city engineer and the traffic engineer that can make recommendations, it's the Road Commission of Oakland County that ultimately will decide where that driveway is located. Now, if they say that driveway shall be 50 feet further north or south, that may have an impact on the site plan, which then we'd have to bring back.
Okay.
But if they permit it in that location, it doesn't have a significant impact on the layout, then we're good to go.
Okay.
If they come back and say this is an unsafe situation based on our data, based on our standards, and there shall be no driveway, there shall be 2 driveways, they ultimately will control that because it's their jurisdiction.
Okay.
And we have the control of the Edwards Ave because that's under city's jurisdiction, and we follow the same standards and guidelines. But part of what this commission asked for is the traffic impact, because it was a legitimate issue on the neighborhood's part. Mr. Bell has raised some issues from his opinion on how things should be, and other commissioners agree or disagree. But ultimately, as I stated in our study session, the Road Commission of Oakland County controls where those go.
Right.
The signs, timing of the signals, and so forth. And if they say, add another turn lane, and the developer wants to move forward, he's gonna have to do and pay for
I
that.
just wanted to
So
make
I
sure,
don't
because
wanna
I
get
saw
into a debate.
everyone nodding their heads when he was saying it's getting better, and it's not at all. I just want to make sure. Just,
Can I make a statement? I just want to make a statement. Since you pointed out the drive, the further one that's further up, and he mentioned that, now it's on my head, I want you to know someone's hearing,
Great.
that you couldn't make those turns on that,
Right.
okay?
Right.
So that does make a little difference in my brain. I'm thinking you could do that turn, so it is better if you could do both
Right,
turns
exactly,
there.
right.
So I see what you're saying, but I also concur with our planner that the road commission's not gonna let anything go there that does not
okay,
make sense.
all right, fair enough.
So,
One last question. We're talking about traffic impact, right? So they said that in that, can you pull up the one that shows the typical number of Golden Corral vehicles per day? So there was one other one, or was that it? No, that's it. So the typical is 79?
No, that's IT.
Okay, right, and the Golden Corral, or Kurt's Golden Corral, is 85?
No.
But you projected 93.
The column
Yep.
in the center, vehicles, 57, 55.
Okay.
That's particular to the Golden Corral based on the number of persons, 128 and 124, they have on a typical day during those peak times,
Okay.
which is less than what we forecast with the 85 and 79 based on national data published by IT.
Just inbound.
Okay. So I just sat and did some math based on the number of vehicles. You figure you take out some for employees, and then the number of vehicles of customers, times 2.25 per vehicle, times whatever their average ticket is, $9 or $10, is very generous, I think, per person, gets you their annual sales. And if their annual sales are really 5 or 6 times what this says, wouldn't it make sense that the traffic then is really going to be 5 or 6 times this projected traffic? And all I'm saying is, everybody here can do that math. I did that math.
I'm sorry. Through the chair. Repeat that question 5, 6 times. How did you come up with that?
What's the average sales of a Golden Corral?
3.6 million on computer website of Golden Corral.
Okay.
Sorry.
So 3.6 million divided by, and you can do this math really simple, 365 days a year, divided by $9.60 per person, divided by 2.2, well, you can take out the customers, or the employees, you don't even have to, divided by 2.25, that's how many vehicles. That's a lot more than 85.
Well, no, it would be a daily.
Per hour.
Per hour.
That's
Per hour.
That's per hour.
These are peak hours.
And it's per
Okay, I don't
hour,
think that was clear, at least it wasn't clear to me. That's per hour?
per hour during the peak time.
Okay.
That's what it said.
Okay.
There's a couple things, though, that is important. I just want to make sure we get this straight. When you get onto the ITE website, you don't get trip generation. You don't get all that information. Those books with all that information are several $100s. They're not, that information is not on their website. You have to pay the freight to get that. So you won't find that. But the traffic crash information, you get it from the city, you can get it from SimCog. SimCog's website is cool because you can get on there and figure that all out. You get traffic volumes, you get historical counts, you get all kinds of things off there. There's nothing secret about it, and we weren't trying to get away with anything. The city traffic engineer knows where all that stuff is. He knows, we're writing that for him, not for somebody who doesn't know where to find things. So, and the point, it's real important to say it's accepted practice, because I don't want you to think that we're making stuff up, or we're doing something that's non-traditional.
Okay, I think we can move on.
I just have a quick question. In some previous meetings, there was some questions. I thought the traffic review was going to also address the question of perhaps closing down Edwards to reduce the impact on the neighborhood. Was that a part of the study at all?
No, I don't think it was.
Through the chair, just a clarification, what we asked for was recommendations for improvements, which include that right turn lane, radius, the no left turn. Those types of recommendations were coming as part and parcel to the traffic impact study. So we didn't know what the traffic engineer was going to make as far as recommendations go. Now, if for whatever reason this study said there's going to be 5,000 cars on Edwards, which is 2.5 times what the maximum on a residential street is, that would have warranted further investigation on, traffic bumps, offsets, chicanes, and those types of traffic calming issues on Edwards. But the study verified that there isn't a severe issue, and there's not one that's expected based on the volumes to trigger additional traffic calming measures on Edwards. But we do got some additional traffic engineering recommendations on how to improve flow around the site. And that's where maybe you were thinking about recommendations. We didn't know what the traffic impact was going to discover, and if they did discover that there was going to be severe traffic on Edwards, then we would have gotten some recommendations on how to calm that traffic.
Right. Well, what I see is the increase overall of 57, 55 per hour in the area. But I suspect that perhaps a third of that hourly traffic is going to come down Edwards just because of the nature of the pass through. And so it's going to be an increased problem for the neighborhood. And at some point I thought that the evaluation of whether to close it down would be a part of this whole study.
Well, the study, through the chair, does not indicate that there's going to be any significant increase on traffic on Edwards. That's what the study indicates. So it doesn't warrant any further review at this time.
Question?
Not really a question. I had a document from the Oakland County Road Commission on last week.
That was part of the packet that I submitted to the commission.
So they have that information.
Right.
Okay.
I've got a question on that, around that subject. What, through the chair, item B, on that letter from, the road commission, refers to, if I could, just to you, Terry, refers to, the 102-foot wide half-width right-of-way on Southfield Road. I've never heard it termed that way. What does that mean?
Well, do you want to address that, or do you want me to try to? Go ahead. What would be the standard right-of-way for Southfield Road, through the chair? Let's see, a 5-lane road, somewhere around 120.
Well, it needs to be on that right-of-way there for that divided highway, and my understanding was there's adequate land there for that.
But we have found on Southfield Road that we don't have a consistent right-of-way up and down. So that's what, I think that's referencing, is that in some places, we only have, half of the right-of-way is not equal to the other half.
Right. Okay, but so the half on the eastern side of the midline of Southfield
is, what it should be. Is that what it's saying, by half width? From the midline,
No.
to the lot line of this property?
When it says the road, RCOC master right-of-way plan indicates this is a master right-of-way plan.
Okay.
Which they may or may not have it, but they want. It's what they want.
Okay, well,
Indicates a 102-foot half-width right-of-way for Southfield Road. The existing right-of-way is shown to be 102 feet wide half-width. Please contact so-and-so to discuss that. Why in the world it says it's a little bit of a strange statement, right? What they're looking for, so the bottom line is, and that's not really clear, but the right-of-way there that's out there now for a 5-lane road is about 120 feet, I think. In fact, it usually is for a 5-laner. Fact is, though, they need more in order to put a boulevard in there for the plan, the master right-of-way plan. It's kind of like your master land use plan. This is what you'd like to see, or what it is, and this is where we're going. They have a road commission, the state does the same thing, has what's called a master right-of-way plan, which is something that they hope to achieve based on what they think their future road needs are going to be.
And that would be 204 feet wide.
Okay,
with a 60-foot wide median.
Right.
Okay.
We've had some discussion as the city saying, if you get your full 204 feet, you're making existing parking in the front non-conforming. Those businesses would lose that parking and they wouldn't be able to operate. What the road commission would like is a 60-foot wide green median. We said shorten that so that you don't need as much right-of-way, so we're not impacting their land uses. So that 102 is referring to the center line over. They'd like that on either side for a total of 204.
Okay.
And that would accommodate their 60-foot wide
Okay,
median.
that comes close to answering what I was looking
Here's your
for.
plan.
The total they need is
Trying to get to it.
204.
Oh, yeah.
And so half width is half of that from the
Right.
lot line.
So since this is only being developed on half the side, whenever they can, they would like the adjacent property owner to donate or to designate that full half width along their property. And I believe that's what that's being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's what they're,
Helps me a little.
I think that's what they're doing. So from here to there would be about 102 feet.
Okay,
Hopefully,
that's what
if this is 30 scale, it looks pretty good.
That's what I was guessing at, but I've never seen it written that way before, so I thought I'd ask. If I could, while I'm on this letter, it doesn't have anything to do with traffic, but item A on this says the detention pond should be sized to accommodate 100-year storm runoff event. Why not? Why don't we have it? The road commission is saying that it should.
This is a preliminary comment, and the city has their own standard, which I believe is the 100-year flood, which that should be sized to. Well, whatever the city standards are. This was August 18th. So these are preliminary comments. Basically, when they submit for a permit, then they give detailed information. Again, this is their wish list. Whatever the city, if I misstated, whatever the city's, it's designed to city standards.
Okay, so the 10-year storm is what it's going to be at.
That's what the city standard is. And again, I defer to my colleagues.
Under
in
the city
engineering
standard,
department.
in the 12-town drain
Scale
is 100 years, but in the rest of the city it's 10 years.
Yeah, because that's probably,
Unless there's some
that's
exception.
collecting probably from a larger area.
Well, the 12 towns in Southfield is further to the east of this piece of property by about 100 yards.
Okay, any more questions on the traffic impact statement? Everybody pretty clear, everybody understands it from front to back, right? We ready to move on? Concerns?
If I can, through the chair, when can we get copies of the updated material there?
Well, I'm just seeing it for the first
We'll
time
email it
tonight,
to 'em.
so
We'll
hopefully
email it to
tomorrow,
'em.
and then I'll forward it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
Good job.
Terry, it's 102 from there to the back of the
Yeah, that's
sidewalk.
what I heard.
Thank you.
So they're doing what the road commission's going to ask them to do.
I thought that's what it meant, but I'd never seen it written that way before, and I never.
Anybody need to take a restroom break?
Yeah.
You want to see the whole 200?
Let's, if we could keep it to 5 minutes, because, the last two items will go quickly, but we do have some other residents here, and our city assessor has been sitting here patiently, and I asked him to come to address the concerns of the Gardner Street residents, so. I'll
5 minutes.
I'll set up the maps. So if you could give me your PowerPoint presentation, and then, maybe just tweak that head on, I'm sure